I went from being a bio major with no clue what I wanted to do with my life to being a science communication specialist who loves my job. Now, recently I've noticed an interest, like an uptick of interest in people wanting to know how to go from STEM to science communication and how to make that transition. And I've actually had quite a few people reach out to me to ask how I did it. So I figured I would share my story here, and hopefully it will help some of you who are also looking to make that transition. When I first found out about science communication, or SciComm, it wasn't the buzzword that it is today. It was still called science journalism. So back in 2011, I was a junior in college and I was a bio major. And I absolutely loved bio. But somewhere around my third upper division bio class, I realized that memorization is not something that I like doing. I love biology and I love science for the sake of gaining that knowledge. Like, I'm curious. I want to find out how things work and why they work that way. I don't necessarily want to sit here and have to chug all of that information down, memorize it, and then regurgitate it. So here's the thing. The original plan was med school. But when I had that realization, I realized med school was probably not going to be for me. Add that to the fact of, full disclaimer, organic chemistry kicked my butt. So med school was honestly probably out of the question anyway. Senior year, I was a bio major and an English minor because I love biology and I love English. I love writing. And it was coming up to the time of graduation and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? All my plans are kind of just all over the place now. So I went to the Career Center at my school and I basically poured out my life story to this poor counselor who was like, okay, I've heard it all before, relax, we'll figure this out, we'll get your life on track and in order. And when she reviewed my transcript, she noticed that I was doing really well in biology and I was doing really well in English. And so she asked me if I had ever heard of science writing, which at the time I was like, no, what's that? And she basically said, think National Geographic. And now me, I grew up watching National Geographic. I watched Nova on PBS every Sunday night while I was getting my hair done. Like that was my jam. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, okay, that makes so much sense. That would be really cool. So she printed out a bunch of papers for me about it. And I went online and started doing my own little Googling. And I was like, this is really cool. This is something that I think I'm interested in. So it was towards the end of the semester. It was time to start signing up for classes for the upcoming semester. And I signed up for some journalism classes because I was like, hey, I got to practice more writing. I got to learn how to write a science news story. So I did that and found out I like journalism. I don't like reporting, but I do like journalism because I like writing and I like English. You'll notice there's a theme here. So essentially, the science journalism would be combining the two things that I like the most, learning about science and writing. I can write about the science that I like. When it came time to apply for grad school, I started looking up programs in master's programs around the country, and there were not a lot of them in 2011. There was Johns Hopkins, there was Wisconsin-Madison, there was Boston University, there was one at Texas State University or something like that, and then there was one in California, and then there was Stony Brook. Stony Brook actually happens to be my alma mater. That's where I was going for undergrad as well. So I applied to a few of those and I got into Boston and I got into Stony Brook, and then realized that Boston was incredibly expensive. And I was like, well then, Stony Brook it is. Stony Brook was basically a third of the price. So while I was waiting, to transition into grad school, I had to take my GREs and everything like that. I decided I wanted to get some experience and some practice before like launching headfirst into this graduate life of doing science journalism. So I decided to try making a blog. And I made a science blog on Tumblr, of all places. And it was called The Nerdy Stuff. And I was also looking on Tumblr for other sorts of science blogs. And what I noticed was like most of the science blogs that were out there, there was nobody who looked like me or sounded like me. All of the colors were very traditional science boy colors. Like everything was blue, everything was green. And I get it, like we live on a green planet with blue water, so to speak. Water's not blue, but I digress. But I was like, I like looking at pretty things. I love looking at fashion magazines and stuff like that. So what if I could present science and talk about science in like an aesthetic way? So that became what the nerdy stuff was supposed to be. I was supposed to be presenting science, but making it beautiful. And that eventually transitioned into what I have now, which is the Neuroaesthetic. It's an Instagram account. I'll link it down below. You can check it out if you're interested. For my first attempt at grad school, because yes, there was more than one attempt, when I graduated with my bachelor's in biology, I had a concentration in neuroscience. My mom was really sick during that time, and so I ended up taking a year off to take care of her, and I started working in the meantime. Once I finished up with my fall course, unfortunately, the job that I was working at did not let me switch my schedule around to accommodate taking any more classes. Apparently, the chair of the board said, can't she finish school some other time? Which was really annoying and sucked because I let them know when I took the job that school was going to be a priority, and they agreed that that was okay and they were going to work with me and work with my schedule. So that led to me taking a break from grad school, just continuing to work, but I did not take a break from the science journalism. I started trying to write more on my blog and write about different science topics. I reached out to medical professionals to interview them about different topics that I was writing about, and that was really fun, actually. And it's something that I recommend doing if you're looking to transition from like doing science to actually writing about it and talking about it to the public. Pick your own topics and like go interview people about it. Be a science journalist. You don't actually need credentials just to practice, like for your own self. Now, if you're going to put this out there as something that, you are the expert on the issue, it helps to have a background and that you're like in the subject and to actually be talking to experts. But everybody has to start somewhere. And it's a fun thing to do. It's a fun way to get started. So I do recommend that. While I was working, I started tutoring privately in science and in English. I was tutoring grade school children. And that was something that I really enjoyed too. I literally just printed up some flyers, stuck them up in the school that I was working at and at the pediatrician down the block and at the corner store and stuck them on, what are those things called? Light poles. And I got my first few clients that way, and the rest of it spread through word of mouth. So I was getting experience in explaining complicated topics, in STEM to somebody who needed it broken down into a more digestible sort of style. Yeah, so that's another way that I got experience in communicating science. And then now we come to my second attempt at grad school. That happened, that started happening around maybe like 2017, 2018. I reached back out to the school and I said I wanted to re-enroll. I kind of got the runaround for a little bit at first, but what it eventually came down to was that the program had lost funding and they weren't accepting any new students or returning students. Only the ones that were currently enrolled would be allowed to finish out the program. That was that. It was getting shut down. But it was then going to be rebuilt from the ground up and become a science communication master's program instead of a science journalism master's program. So with me being incredibly persistent and incredibly annoying and a lot of emails and eventually just driving down to the school to talk to the people in person, because it's easy to ignore emails. It's not as easy to ignore someone if they are in your face in front of you. You need to give them an actual answer. Yeah, I was allowed to rematriculate as with my degree being a journalism major because a lot of the courses with journalism overlapped with what would be required for the upcoming science communication masters. And then once that program launched, I was allowed to just like switch over and transition into science communication. But I already was about 75% done by the time the program actually launched. So that was really, really fortunate. But I do credit a lot of that. Besides crediting it to God, I credit a lot of it to persistence because they had to come up with a solution for me because I wouldn't leave them alone. I was enrolled in the graduate program for science communication at Stony Brook, and while I was doing that, I needed an internship. So I ended up finding an internal internship. There was a center at the school that was launching a science communication website, and I was able to help build out that website and work on it and write content for it and create graphics for it from like the ground up, which was really neat. Then, right before I was supposed to graduate, my internship supervisor, who was the person running that site, got a job offer from the EPA and was like, peace out, y'all. Which, like, as she fully should be, because that's pretty darn awesome. And I ended up having to manage the website in her absence while they were putting out, what are they called? While they were putting out a job listing, during the job search to find a replacement for her. Then the director encouraged me that I should apply since, I was literally doing the job. Like, why not apply for it? And I did. And I got the job. So that is how I went from being a bio major to becoming a science communication specialist and getting to run a website that is all about science communication research and the work that goes into it and how to do it effectively. And it's so cool and I love doing it. So yeah, hopefully something from that experience would kind of help you and inspire you in your journey in transitioning from doing science at a bench or at a lab or in academia to doing science communication. So advice that I would give you if you're looking to transition from being in STEM to talking about STEM, to communicating science, is one, start a blog. That will give you practice in talking about whichever field your expertise is in, whether if you're like a physics major or if you're a bio major, bleh, or if you're a bio major like I was, or technology, like anything, whatever it is that your major is, start writing about that or start making TikTok videos about it or make an Instagram about it. Like, do that, and with practice and repetition, you'll get better at it, and you'll also be building up an audience for yourself. You'll be building up a write for the New York Times, in their science section or something like that. You'll have a writing portfolio. Another thing that I would recommend to do is there are a ton of sites that you can check out that talk about how to do science communication effectively, and I'll leave those in the description below so you can check those out as well. Be persistent. Like, don't give up, because basically everybody that I know that's in science communication, they did not have a linear path to get here. So, and especially because science communication is still a relatively new field, you can pretty much forge your own path, and you get to decide what it is you want to do and how you want to do it. Like, there's room for pioneering in this field, which is exciting. We get to shape the future of an entirely new career. I mean, not entirely new, but it's expanding in ways that it never has before, especially since like 2020 and the world realized, oh crap, we actually need to make sense when we talk to the public about science. Gee, who knew? Yeah. Yeah, so that's my story, and I hope it was helpful for you and that you gleaned something from it. And if you're someone who has transitioned from STEM to SciComm, I would love to hear what your journey was like, because I'm really curious. Yeah, so like leave that in the comments below. Let me know. And if you have any advice for somebody who wants to make the transition, put that in the comments below too, because that way we can have a community where we share information back and forth and we help each other out, and that'll be awesome. So until next time, I will see you around. Bye.